Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we're lineup building for week 11 of the NFL season over on DraftKings, over cash game and GPP strategy. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Optimizers, ownership projections, cheat sheets, projections, all that fun stuff in a Discord community can be found down below for the NBA and the NFL. Also, MLB and NASCAR once those seasons start back up again. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know this by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you. Versus the projections of those Sharks, 150th mass contest or salary cap restrictions or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you're signing over on PrizePicks, you can get a free money bonus as an instant deposit match up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. You can use the link down below or head over to prizepicks.com, but it's free money, so why not use it to your advantage. I think that'll be it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, gotta start with a little disclaimer here before we start the video, so just keep in mind, this is not me just giving you guys a lineup. I am just simply going through my own cash game process, or really just a process in general when constructing lineups, so you guys can apply these same processes to your own favorite players and build your own lineups. I'm not sure if this is a guaranteed lineup I'm going to use or not. I am just simply going through it on a Saturday morning, and a lot of things can change by the time Sunday rolls around. I got to play around with the optimizer and all that fun stuff. So again, please do not copy and paste this. Please use your own judgment. But anyway, as I always say, for cash games and stacks and tournaments, you can go the other way. But in cash games, the most important position is the running back position, because these are the guys that are going to get guaranteed touches. They're going to touch the ball the most. And you want to make sure that the guys that you want the most. You don't want stuck with some random 4K running back that is like getting 20% of the snaps and you just hope gets a couple carries. That's not going to work, especially in a cash game format. We need volume, we need good matchups, we need good game scripts, and we need good volume, really, which I think I already mentioned. And we need some talented running backs as well. I don't want to play just some bum. Although sometimes if they're cheap enough and the starter is out, like Mark Ingram last week, I don't think he's that good anymore. He's definitely going to be playing cash games just because of the price point. But anyway, running back is pretty deep this week, and there's a lot of ways you can go. There's several guys up top that are great plays. Christian McCaffrey being the number one play. Then you have Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, who got activated off the COVID list. You have Ezekiel Elliott, DeAndre Swift. Like, there are so many good plays. I think this is a good week, though, to save a little bit of money. And I think the mid-range is actually pretty loaded this weekend with guys like A.J. Dillon, James Conner, Michael Carter. With Eli Mitchell being doubtful, we now have Jeff Wilson at only $5,100 going to be in a starting role versus Jacksonville. I think that's very appealing, especially in cash games at these cheap price points, because if you go all mid-range running backs, you can afford some expensive wide receivers, which are some really good expensive wide receivers in this slate, like Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, the list goes on. And there's some good expensive quarterbacks. So you can go multiple ways. If you want to go expensive at running back, you're going to have to save some money probably at quarterback or wide receiver, or if you want to go cheap at running back, you can spend up at other positions. So for me personally, as of right now, I think I'm going to go mid-range. We might play around with putting like a CMC in at the end and kind of swapping a few guys out and see which one looks better. But for right now, for me, I am probably going to stick with the mid-range here. And the number one guy I'm going to plug in first, A.J. Dillon, $6,200. Is really hard to fade in my opinion. I like him in tournaments, I like him in cash games. It's just the volume is going to be there. There's no Aaron Jones. He's going to be RB1 for the Packers, which for years now, like for years, we've loved the RB1 for the Packers. And A.J. Dillon should probably be above $7,000. And the fact that he's not just screams value. He had 21 carries last week, 2 targets. That's 23 total opportunities. Had nearly 27 points. He's the goal line back. He's a bruiser. Minnesota is not good versus the run. Their bottom 10 DVOA. So I think at $6,200, A.J. Dillon is just pretty much a free square this weekend. Projecting him currently to be the highest owned player in the entire slate. I mean, I could maybe see a guy like Tyreek Hill or something like that overcome that just because of popularity in big tournaments, but in cash games, I would fully expect A.J. Dillon to be the chalk here. I think it is for a good reason, because anytime we get cheap volume on a good team and a talented running back, you just kind of have to play that most times. And now after that, there's a decision to be made, because like I said, I like James Conner, but I don't like James Conner at the same time, because he's not a guy I like rostering, because he just keeps getting there on touchdowns, but they just keep happening. But he's got a great matchup this weekend versus Seattle. And with no Chase Edmonds, he actually has been used in the passing game, which does give him a little bit of a floor. We didn't talk about Mark Ingram at $5,400. There's no Alvin Kamara. Philly has not been good versus the run this year. Mark Ingram was not good last week, but he got there on the passing game because he had a nice long catch or two. And I mean, he did get into the end zone, but yardage-wise on the ground, it was not pretty. Kind of just plodding behind the offensive line. But he is certainly in play again. $5,400. Not as cheap as he was last week, but he's certainly playable. You have Michael Carter here, Myles Gaskin. Lots of good options here. But for me, I'm going to go with James Conner. I know, like I said, I don't really like the guy. Yardage-wise, he's never that great. 22 yards, 96 yards, which was good versus San Francisco. 39 yards last week, kind of got there in that 11-yard touchdown he had, which was his longest carry of the entire game. But the last 2 weeks, probably the most important thing is these 5 and 4 targets. That's 9 targets the past 2 weeks. Before that, the guy's just non-existent in the passing game. So Chase Evans being out is definitely a big boost for him. 40 and 15 points the last 2 weeks. It's just a good matchup versus Seattle. They've been terrible versus the run so far this year. I think they're allowing like top 3 points allowed per game to the running back position. He's cheap. He's going to get volume. I don't mind James Conner. They're getting blown out last week. If they can keep this game somewhat close, Kyler Murray is still questionable to play, but if he's playing, I mean, that's definitely a big boost to the offense. I think that definitely helps out James Conner and just keeping the Cardinals close, because last week with Colt McCoy, they were getting absolutely demolished. And at this point, like I said, I like more running backs, and I think this is a good week to go with 3 running backs. I'm just going to plug in another cheapie here for the flex spot. Again, we could go with a CMC. Like, it's totally viable. That leaves us around $5,000 per player, which we can easily do on this slate. We might try that at the end here. But for me, I'm actually going to plug Jeff Wilson here, which actually, doesn't James Conner start at 4 p.m.? So we're actually going to plug in James Conner in the flex spot, just because you always want to put your late game starting player in the flex spot if you can over a guy starting at 1 p.m. just to give you more added flexibility, which it did not listen to me. So I'm going to have to plug in Jeff Wilson first. But he's only $5,100. Eli Mitchell looks like he's going to be out. Hasty is out. Everybody's out for the 49ers besides Jeff Wilson for the most part. He did have 10 carries last week, so I'm pretty sure we're probably going to get like around 20 total touches from Jeff Wilson here. He should catch some passes. He's facing Jacksonville. They should be winning this game. They are favorites. I know they are worse versus the pass than they are versus the run, but I do like Jeff Wilson a lot. He's too cheap, and really, A.J. Dillon, Jeff Wilson, and James Conner do grade out as my 3 best value running backs in the entire slate. So I think just plugging them all in probably makes sense with the way this roster construction is going to work out with the lineup that I want to build here. So after plugging in Jeff Wilson, we're going to plug in James Conner again in the flex spot just to give you that added flexibility in case you wanted to swap out James Conner, depending on how things go in the 1 p.m. games. So we're going to plug him in the flex spot. That's going to give us around $5,500 per player, which at this point, we could either start knocking off wide receivers or we could go to the quarterback position. I think it's fine to go with the quarterback right now just to see what we have to work with salary-wise once we plug one in. And for me in cash games this weekend, it's really between, I would say 2, but I guess you could also extend that to 4. If you wanted to go Josh Allen, if you had the money for him versus Indy, that's totally fine. If you want to save some money with Cam Newton at $5,100 versus Washington, I mean, just awful defense, allowing the most points per game to the quarterback position right now. That's fine. He's only $5,100. But since we went all value at running back, I don't think we have to go cheap at quarterback. We should be able to fit a more expensive guy. And for me, I want to either play Patrick Mahomes or Dak Prescott. I love this game for fantasy. Unfortunately for Dak, there is no Amari Cooper. He got hit with COVID, so he's unfortunately out. He might be out for the Thanksgiving game as well, which sucks. Which actually I think he is, because it's 10 days and they play on Thursday. So that's unfortunate, which kind of makes me like Patrick Mahomes a little bit more. He's only $400 more. He was fantastic last week. We could pair him up with either a Tyreek Hill or a Travis Kelce. So I think for right now, we're going to side with Patrick Mahomes. And if we side with Patrick Mahomes, he's not really a big running quarterback. He's going to get there just based on someone that he's throwing the ball to kind of having a blow-up game, which is either going to be Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, really. Yeah, there's McCole Hardman and Byron Pringle, but we're not playing one of those guys in cash games. I think it's either going to be Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill. And for me, I would rather spend up for Tyreek Hill than I would Travis Kelce. Dallas's defense versus wide receivers. Yes, they have Trevon Diggs, but I am not really concerned. It's just the targets for Hill has been incredible this year. 10, 11, 18, 9, 12 targets the past 5 weeks. 22, 12, 27, 7, 27 points. This game should pop off. 56 point over under, 2.5 point spread. I just don't see how these guys don't have great games. And I want exposure to this game. It's the late game. People are going to be playing it. If you don't have exposure to this late game, I don't know why. I mean, it's certainly possible you could win, but I just feel like you're not going to win money, to be honest. That could be totally wrong. But in cash games, these guys are going to be very high owned. And the upside, I mean, just fading this game in cash, like just seeing all those minutes remaining from all those people and like pretty much one of the best games of the year is going to be terrifying. So I'd rather just hop on board and get some of those minutes remaining for those 4:25 p.m. games. So we're going to plug in Tyreek Hill, pairing him with Patrick Mahomes. That leaves us $4,200 left for the last few spots. So we have wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, tight end, in defense. We could just plug in the cheap defense of the week, which is the Browns. I'm not sure they're really cheap at $3,100, but they're fairly priced, and they're facing Detroit. They're 11-point favorites at home. I'm just going to try to make these guys fit. They're playing Tim Boyle, going up against Tim Boyle, I should say. And I mean, I know Jared Goff has not been good this year, but I can't imagine Tim Boyle is any better, probably a lot worse. And I'm going to try my best to get the Browns defense. Myles Garrett should have a field day, hopefully. So there's just $4,500 left. Last 3 spots now. One guy, a wide receiver I know I for sure want to plug in is Michael Gallup here at $4,200. He's just too cheap with no Amari Cooper. He slides right into that wide receiver 2 role. He returned last week, had 5 targets, which was just fine for me. We should probably see that closer to 10 this weekend. And I currently have him as the best point per dollar option on the entire slate at the position. So Michael Gallup at $4,200. Gonna plug him in, and plus it has a good correlation if this was a tournament lineup. It's a very chalky tournament lineup, but we do have the Patrick Mahomes, the Tyreek Hill stack. We're running it back with Michael Gallup on the Cowboys. So, I mean, even for tournaments, I guess this lineup works out, but this would be a very, very chalky tournament lineup. So at this point, we can either go wide receiver 3 or the tight end spot. We're gonna have to find a cheaper wide receiver because I'm not playing like a $2,500 tight end. Although I will say there is a $2,500 tight end this week that I actually think is somewhat playable. I'm not sure if I could find him scrolling, but I'd have to look him up. But if you look at John Bates for the Washington football team, he's going to slide into the tight end 1 role this weekend. And last week, he played around 60% of the snaps, had 3 targets, 5.5 points, no Logan Thomas, no Ricky Seals-Jones. John Bates is going to be the number 1 guy here. Not saying it's pretty, but at $2,500, if you need a punt option, I'm not sure I've seen anyone talk about John Bates this weekend, so if you need the punt, he is, I think, playable. No, I wouldn't go there in cash games, but he is playable. But anyway, going back to the wide receiver 3 spot, we can't afford any of these expensive guys. As much as I like to play CeeDee Lamb with them out of Amari Cooper, we have Michael Gallup, and I don't want to get 2 pass catching options for Dallas in addition to Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill just for cash games. I'm just fine having Michael Gallup there at that cheap price point. So for me, we're probably sticking with these like mid-range wide receivers like Corey Davis, Jarvis Landry, which Jarvis Landry's in a good spot. He projects well. I just don't really feel like playing anybody on the Cleveland passing game because it's just not going to be too pretty, I don't think. I feel like they're just going to run the ball with Chubb the entire game. And Baker's just so banged up, it's hard to trust him right now. T. Higgins at $5,400. He's just always too cheap. Projection systems always like him every single week just because he gets so many targets and he's so cheap. He hasn't really had a blow game this year, but 7, 6, 15, 6, 8 targets. That's fantastic for a guy that's only $5,400. Facing the Raiders, this game could be a bit of a shootout. I actually think it's one of the better tournament stacks, like games to stack on the entire slate. So T. Higgins, $5,400. I think he's definitely a fine cash game play. I am projecting him for some decent ownership, so I don't mind hopping on board there. That's going to leave us $4,100 left for the last spot, which I believe Dan Arnold is $4,100. And that is totally fine with me. Spot versus San Francisco, it's okay, but he gets plenty of targets. Ever since joining the Jaguars, 8, 5, 10, 7, 8 targets for a tight end. That is fantastic. Has been around 60-some receiving yards every single week besides Miami, 11, 4, 14, 10, 13 points. Has a massive target share for ever since he joined the Jaguars, so I think it's actually a pretty good-looking lineup. Patrick Mahomes paired with Tyreek Hill ran back with Michael Gallup. You have A.J. Dillon, Jeff Wilson, James Conner, and then you have T. Higgins, Dan Arnold, and the Browns defense. And that leaves you $0 salary remaining, which it looks pretty good. It does. Now, if you want to go with the Christian McCaffrey lineup, we're probably going to have to take out a guy like Tyreek Hill or potentially James Conner. We'll have to see here. So if we plug in Christian McCaffrey, we go with hopefully James Conner. I'd like to still be able to fit him in. So at this point, we're around $3-some thousand over budget, which means we have to find a lot more value here. We probably can't afford Tyreek Hill, unfortunately. And maybe we could drop the Browns defense to something like the Panthers, which is actually decent correlation with McCaffrey, although I wouldn't even care if McCaffrey's playing from behind just because he gets so many targets. But if you wanted to go this route, you'd have a guy like Cole Beasley down there, which this lineup does not look as good in my opinion. I just don't feel like I need to force McCaffrey this week. Like, that's a fine lineup. You have a bunch of mid-range wide receivers, but now we lost our pass-catching option with Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, you could obviously drop down Dan Arnold, but to be honest, I think the other one looks a lot better. So maybe just going fully mid-range or running back is probably the best way to go. But that lineup having $0 remaining, the original one that we made, I could see that being very popular this weekend. That could be like the lineup train potentially. We'll have to wait and see, but it does look pretty good. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Cheat sheets, ownership projections, optimizers, projections in general, all that fun stuff can be found down below for the NBA and the NFL every single day. And MLB and NASCAR once the season start back up again, which we're not too far away, just a couple of months. So definitely a lot to be excited about. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by Prize Picks, just you versus the projections. And as of right now, if you're new signing over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN. Head to PrizePicks.com, or you can use the link down below and tell them I sent you. I think that'll be it. I will stop rambling. I'll see you guys later tonight for the Core Plays video.